Hey, 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 it's Terry, Virginia's daughter, and I'm back today with an ottoman transformation. Yes, 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 yes. So I needed an ottoman for a space, and I started pricing them, and I'm like, I just don't want to pay that kind of money for the size ottoman that I needed. So I needed a fairly large one. This one happens to be 35 inches in diameter. So I was like, you know what? Let me go to the thrift store to see if I can find an ottoman. I almost purchased two mix match ottomans, but they were square and they would also serve as storage. So there was a place for storage as well. But I'm glad I didn't go with that. I left them there. One of them was busted up pretty bad, and I'm like, oh, I don't even know if I can make this work. So then I went to a different thrift store and found this beauty right here. While this ottoman is well made, it was well covered, I would venture to say that this probably wasn't that expensive to begin with. But in any case, I am very pleased with the project. It was my first time actually renewing, transforming an ottoman, if you will. I've recovered dining chairs before, but I'd never done an ottoman. So one thing that I have to mention in full transparency, I didn't plan this project. So I wanted an ottoman. I went out and found one at the thrift store. I brought it home. You know, whenever you purchase like something like this from the thrift store, they have a little tag on it that says it's been sanitized by the thrift store. But in any case, I let it sit in my garage for a couple of days before I brought it in the house. I brought it in the house and I just started ripping it apart. It was when I got the top portion off that I was like, I probably should select a fabric. You know, what fabric do I have in my stash that I can use? And at that point, I think that's when I selected the fabric. But you will notice that I don't have proper tools. So I start out using a screwdriver and a pair of needle nose pliers that I had like in a toolkit. So, you know, I highly recommend that, you know, you get the right tools. Now, I ended up purchasing an actual remover and a heavy duty staple gun for the second portion of this transformation, because I was just like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I need the right kind of stuff to do this and work efficiently. Aside from that, you know, it was pretty, it was a great experience and I learned quite a bit. So once I got it in the house, I just turned it over and just started investigating, you know, checking things out, trying to see what I'm getting myself into. When I flipped it over, I flipped up the flaps that were there. Now, initially I thought, I don't want these granny looking flaps. You know, it just kind of dated it, you know. But later, when I decided on the fabric, I was like, I would like to have these flaps on there. Out of that particular fabric, I think it would have added some dimension to it. But I didn't have enough fabric. So when I flipped it over, I saw this little cardboard strip that was all the way around the ottoman, and so I took that off first, and then once I took that off, I was able to take the flaps off. The flaps were well made again, so there were 6 larger flaps and then 6 smaller flaps that served as kind of like a, what do you call it, it filled in the gap where the larger flaps kind of gapped open so that it would be a continuous look all the way around. There were no spaces, no gaps in the ottoman. Once I removed those, then I was able to get to the base of the ottoman. So there's 2 rectangular pieces of fabric that were like, I think 59.5 inches long, maybe 10.5 inches wide, that went around the actual, you know, the base part of the ottoman. The top edge of that fabric is connected to the bottom edge of the top of the ottoman. So the fabric that covers the cushion, the bottom edge of that fabric is attached to the top edge of the base fabric, you know, that those rectangular pieces that go around the ottoman. I was able to detach the two, but the bottom edge of the base fabric was attached to the bottom portion of the ottoman underneath the cambria, the dust cover. So yeah, I got to a place where once I got that bottom of the top edge disconnected from the top of the ottoman, I just let it hang down and I started removing the cording. Once I got to that point, the only thing that was left to do then was to remove the buttons and remove the top portion of the fabric that's covering the ottoman. So that's what I did. Once I started getting up under there, I'm like, oh, what is going on under here? Well, there was like a disc that had like a rod that had some thread through it. And I could only see two of them. I really couldn't see where the discs were attached. So that really kind of dissuaded me from doing the buttons, to be honest with you. So what I did was I just pulled it up enough to kind of cut the cord that was holding the buttons in place. And I removed all of it that way. 12 buttons total. So we are getting there. Yeah, I mean, this project is in full effect at this point. The only thing that I have left to do now is to remove all the bottom. Once I got the dust cover off, then I decided, you know what, let me just take the wheels off while I'm at this point and then take the, that daggone base fabric off. Okay, finally. I did run into somewhat of an issue with the wheels. So my initial plan was to replace these rolling type wheels with just like a steady, leg, since you'd be able to see a portion of it. So have it to be a little decorative or at least kind of updated. Okay. But I ran into an issue with the wheels. I could only get 4 of the 6 of them off. I tried and I tried. Like I said, this went from one weekend to another. So in between, I was trying to get those wheels off and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get them off. There was not enough space between the wheel and the actual wood of the ottoman to do that. So I just put the wheels back on. I actually put the wheels back on to work on the project because I couldn't do it. It was like an unsteady, you got 4 wheels off and 2 wheels on. It was an unsteady situation. So needless to say, the ottoman does have wheels, and so it moves at times when you don't want it to. I've been sitting on the, on the chair and prop my feet up on the ottoman, and depending on how my feet are positioned on the ottoman, it could move. So I have to kind of stabilize the ottoman with my feet. So there's that. I could really see how the ottoman was constructed, which was pretty cool for me. I mean, I'm like, okay, so if you wanted to just make an ottoman, you could kind of get an idea of how it was made. So that was pretty cool. This upholstery piece of fabric has been in my stash for, I know, probably 15 years. It was a remnant piece, and I think it was only like 2 yards and some inches. I'm not sure. I'll let you know exactly how much fabric that was, but I'm like, this would be perfect because I think initially I was going to make some pillows or something out of it. I don't even remember, but I found that fabric. And so then I needed to see if I had enough. What I did was I just brought the fabric down and, kind of roughly laid the pieces on top of it to see if I was going to be able to use it before I took it, into my lab to like start cutting it out and stuff. So yeah, I did that and I'm like, okay, this is going to be enough. Now I may have to piece some things together, like I may have needed, 4 extra inches on one of the rectangles, but I had enough fabric left over to do that. And so that's what I did. Once I laid all the pieces out, cut them out, the only thing left to do then was to start applying them, to reapply the fabric to the ottoman, the cut out pieces. While I can consider this project to be fun overall, this was really the fun part. So once I got the circle cut out, then I moved on to the 2 rectangular pieces. So of course I went for the big pieces first. Once I cut out the rectangular pieces, now I was a little short. So what I had to do was, cut a separate piece of fabric, the same, width and the extra length that I needed to attach it to that fabric. And I didn't sew it together. I just, stapled it together, folded it over, gave it like a finished edge, and then stapled it onto the ottoman. All right, so at this point, I have everything cut out. I'm done for today. I started with the top and I just started, stapling. I forgot that strip. I totally forgot that I needed to replace that strip. So anyway, I put the top on first and then I put the base sides on. And then I stitched the cording. This could be a total no-sew project when it comes to the cording. So you really wouldn't have to sew it up. You could just cut it, fold it over. Instead of stitching it, just staple it on. So you would have enough space where you could just staple it. Where the stitches would go, you would just have staples in it all the way around. Or you could hot glue gun it. You could do that as well. Well, by the time I got to the part where I needed to put this bottom part on, it made sense for me to take the 4 wheels off that I could, start applying it, and then when I got to the 2 wheels that I couldn't remove, then I just kind of cut into that fabric and wrapped it around the wheel and stapled it as best as I could, to give it like a clean finish or whatever. And it turned out really nice. So you can see that I just made like a slit in the fabric, wrapped it around the wheel, and then attached it that way. So it worked out great. It worked out just great. I'm like, this is looking really good. I realized that I needed to cover up that cording somehow. And somehow I cut the cording piece a little short. I don't know how I did this because I'm like, wait a minute. I said, I'm gonna leave it just like this. This is my thing. I have to look at it. I have to live with it, and nobody else does. Lo and behold, I remember I have a collection of fringe in my stash. And so I'm like, I got some black fringe. I'm just going to put some black fringe on here. All I did was glue gunned it on, and it went on so seamlessly. Can you imagine what that would look like with those black buttons on top? I keep imagining that, and I'm like, oh, I might have to make an adjustment to this. But that is it. That is my ottoman project. The only things that I had to purchase was the Cambria and the tools. So you know how you get a word in your head and you just can't get it out? It's not Cambria. It's cambric. Every place I've said that, I meant to say that. Like I mentioned earlier, I purchased my cambric at Joann Fabrics. Now, if you purchase the cambric by the yard, it's cheaper, especially when it goes on sale. If you purchase it as a dust cover, you're going to get 5 yards for a whole lot more money. So I would say that if you're going to do a project like this and you need to purchase that, purchase it by the yard, have a coupon for Joann's or something like that. Don't spare that extra expense to have it prepackaged. It's the same fabric. I am well pleased with this project. There are some things that I would do differently. Some of them I've mentioned here. So I would add buttons. There's some creasing, or should I say pleating, that's going around the circular part of the ottoman. And I noticed that on the original ottoman, they just kind of tuck the fabric under some. So I think I would take the time to do that. And the legs, if I could change the legs, I would. I did say that I wanted to add the skirt panels and gussets, but I didn't have enough fabric to do that. So the idea ottoman for me would have all of those things. So the next one, I'm going to have to try to make that happen. Well, I thank you. I thank you for joining me today, spending time with me. I appreciate it. And until next time, take care.